Okay. So now in this who knows what episode, we have we created some logic, right? We created some saving functionality in our service implementation. So we finally can work with our controller over here. Okay, so in our controller, this is where, remember, this is where the web stuff is starting, okay? And this is where we're actually going to create some sort of endpoint for the client to talk to us, to talk to the backend. Okay, so we'll call it teacher controller. I don't know why it took me so long, but anyways, it's not such a genius name, but hey, it is a teacher and it is a controller, so it only makes sense. Anyways, the first thing that we need to do is to annotate our controller and to tell Spring this is a controller. So we're just going to annotate it with a REST controller. And then we need to add the mapping. Now the mapping, remember, the controller is here to create some sort of address or endpoint or something. Okay, it's just like the URL in a way, where you have a URL slash with some sort of domain name with a slash something. Okay, and you have different sort of addresses for different resources. Okay, this is where the client will access the resources. We'll call it API dash, not dash, sorry, slash teacher. Okay, and this is, make sure you add another slash here. Okay, now we'll add another injection. Okay, we know all about injections at this point. So what are we going to inject? We're going to inject the teacher service, right? Because we want to access all this cool logic that we wrote in the previous episode. So auto-wired to make sure that Spring knows that this is a real injection here, and we need this teacher service to use it in our method. So the first thing we're going to do is we need to add a teacher, right? Or add a student. You know what? Let's start with add a teacher, because we need a teacher to make all kinds of things happen. Okay, so it's going to be a post mapping. I didn't talk to you about HTTP protocol, which is like the basic application layer protocol that is the most known. Mostly nowadays you are using HTTPS, which all of you should use. You should definitely not go to any sites with no secured HTTPS communication in it. In HTTP, you have post request when you're sending something or keeping something saved in the database, where you want to send some request and save this request, if you will, and basically get some sort of response back, as with any kind of HTTP communication. Then you have get. Get is basically when you want to receive or get resources from the database, like let's say all the teachers whose name is James. Okay, get all of these teachers. So I need to do a get request, and for that we have get mapping. Okay, then we have put request when we want to update certain fields or the name. Let's say I want to change the name of James, the teacher James, with an ID of 5 to Andy for some reason. Okay, and so this is the put request. And then we have delete. Okay, and then believe it or not, but delete is there to delete certain entities or records from the database. Okay, so awesome. Now we know everything about this. Now again, you can actually do certain things, like you can use a post request to you can actually use a get request to save certain entities, but use it like I described earlier. Okay, there is a protocol, there is a way to do things. Okay, a protocol is basically a rule of how we do stuff. Okay, and there are certain ways that are more secured. Okay, and I'll talk about it hopefully a little bit as well. Okay, so the first one is going to be a post request with a capital P, post mapping, sorry. And the endpoint is going to end with add a teacher. Okay, it's going to be a public. method that returns, what is it going to return? Let's return a response entity. Response entity is basically a nicer format to return any kind of object. Is going to return it in JSON format, which is the most in use way of transferring information using HTTP. Definitely the #1 way to transform information, and it's also very readable. It's a really nice way to do it. Now what we're going to do is we're going to return the teacher back. We're going to return a teacher entity with the response entity, and okay, let's say save teacher. It's called save teacher. And what we're getting here is going to be a teacher. Okay, yes, it's going to be a teacher. And we'll call it teacher. Now we have this teacher parameter here. And what we want to do to tell Spring to use it as request body, because we need to basically create a request body in our client request so we can actually put in the information. And the way for us to do it, to use request body, is just to annotate this parameter here with request body. Okay, now Spring knows that it's going to be some sort of JSON input that looks like a teacher format, like this entity that we have here with an ID, name, age, subject, and all that. Now we have this teacher service injected here. And what we need to add in this case is not a student, but a teacher. And all we do is we pass in the teacher. And that's pretty much it. The only thing that we need to do is return. Let's just return a teacher from here. Ooh, my bad. Oh, we need to return response entity. My bad. Okay, so let's return. It's going to be, we're going to create a new response entity. Okay, so response entity, we're passing in the teacher. Okay, remember, add teacher is also returning the teacher that is going to be added. And the only thing that we need to add to the response entity is the HTTP status with the status code of OK, which is 200, meaning that if everything is OK and the teacher is added, then we get this OK. Okay, and the client will be able to see that this is a 200 status, which is the best scenario we can hope for. Okay, so we got our very basic controller here. Let's just add another one. I'm going to copy paste it because we really don't have a lot to change. And in this case, we'll add a student and save a student. I'm changing the name of the method. We're returning a request entity with a student, and just add a student as a parameter. We'll pass in this. The service is the same, but we need to add a student in that case, not a teacher. Student, and that's pretty much it. Okay, so we got another post request here, post mapping for adding a student. Right now what we want to do, the next thing that we want to do is we want to communicate with our controller. Okay, first of all, we want to run it. We want to run the program. Hopefully we're not going to have any errors. Awesome, no errors. Great. Now, as opposed to previously when we ran the program, it's something that I want you to pay attention to, is that you see this red button over here, Stop Spring Pro Application. Now we have this option that we can actually stop the program, because basically what it means that the program is on. The program is here to stay. I mean, and it's running like any server or any backend application or application you're using on the phone. The backend is always running. And now we have our basically backend application running here. It's not stopping. It's not like it ran once and it's stopping. Right now it's running, and it's actually on this Tomcat port 8080. Okay, so we have somewhere to look for it. Okay, it's on the port 80, and if you want to get access to our resources, it ends with API teacher, add teacher, or add student. Okay, our application is actually on. It's working. Now, how are we going to communicate with our application? We need to have a client. Now, we can already create a React app just to communicate with our and with our backend application. But that would be kind of a pain. I mean, we want to focus on our Spring Boot development, on our Java at this point. So creating a React app just for that would be kind of weird. So what we can do though is we have a program that can basically act like a client. And this is why we have Postman. Okay. So if you don't have Postman, it's incredibly easy to download. Just write download Postman on Google. If you have any issues with that, I mean, just go ahead and ask me if you have any issues setting it up. Now I'll explain about Postman and I'll create a new custom request here. Now, basically Postman will allow us to create requests and send requests to our endpoints, right? To our backend application, and get to save entities, to get information back from the server that we created, basically from the backend application. So like I said, there are all kinds of types of requests that you can make. Like I said before, get, post, put, patch, delete. The ones that I want you to focus on right now are mainly this ones over here, which is get, post, put, and delete. Okay, now in our request, remember, the request is a post request. It's a post mapping. So what we will need to do is to first of all change it to post. Now we need to access this location, right? Actually, we have something similar saved here from before. Okay, so it's very similar. So basically, we start with HTTP. We then indicate that this is our local host. We're still in development. We don't have our own domain that we're running this code on. We have our 8080. Remember, it's running on 8080, and it's actually over here. It says that it's running on 8080, which is the default port. You can actually change it in our properties if it's really necessary. If you have other programs that are already running on 8080, you can always change it. But let's go with this. Then the API teacher, right? This is like the endpoint over here. Okay, this is like the endpoint over here in our controller. Add teacher. Now we need to add the teacher. And we can't just click on send because we got nothing to send here. So what we need to do is in our body here, you have this body. We click on form data. It's another way of doing this, but we're going to choose raw. And instead of text, we're going to choose JSON and some sort of object ID. Then you indicate what ID. Then you add another field. Now remember, our teacher has all these fields: ID, name, age, and subject. Okay, now it has also students, but right now we're just going to add one teacher. So first of all, what we're going to do in our JSON raw, in our body, in our request body, we're going to add the ID. The ID is going to be 0. Okay, why is it 0? Because once we add a new entity, by default, if we add it with a 0, it's going to be added as a new entity, okay, with a new ID, a new record in the database. Okay, what else? Then we have name. Okay, name, and the name is going to be, let's call the guy Chris Cornell. Rest in peace. That's going to be our first teacher. Then age. I think it was more than 50 when he died. But anyways, it's going to be 50. It should be a music teacher, but anyways, not in our case. Subject. Now the subject has to be of our subjects enums here. See, it's going to be a math teacher. I like math, so let's go with math. What else? So we go back to the teacher. Okay, no more fields. Pretty simple. This is our JSON object here that we're going to send. Okay, so everything is ready to go. Post, request, add teacher, and our request body. Just click on send, make sure that your application is running. Ooh, looky. Okay, so we have our first entity added. That's great. Okay, so we got Chris Cornell. The ID right now is not 0, it's 1 because this is the first entity that we added, and it's going to be 1. Now it's 50, and math is the subject. Let's add another one just for the sake of it. Anna Torsky. Don't ask me why, but just Torsky. That's just how it's going to be. She's 35 and she's teaching us, let's go with literature. Awesome. Now, right now I can click and add as many of Anna Trotsky's as I want. Okay, and they're all going to be 35 and literature teachers. Nothing's stopping me from just clicking on and on. And you see more Annas are added with new IDs. That's really bad. Okay, that's not good practice. Okay, because basically what we want to do, we want to check if this name exists already in the repository. Are there any Annas or 35? Maybe you want to make sure that there's going to be only one Anna Trotsky. And if you want to be a new teacher in our class or in our school, there is only one Anna. She was very strict about this. Okay, so maybe we need to add logic into our service that is telling us, hey, only one Anna. And who knows? I mean, the sky's the limit. Maybe there are only 10 literature teachers allowed, okay? Or we only allow people who are above 18 to work as a teacher, which I would imagine makes sense, right? Even though there are a lot of smart kids out there. But this is where the logic is coming in handy, okay? Right now, all we did is just added it to our MySQL. Actually, let's see if it was saved. So I go to the teacher login, I go to my teacher. All right, okay. So we have our lovely Chris Cornell, rest in peace. The age of 50, ID, and the subject 0. Subject 0 is because math was indexed as 0. And then we have just plenty of Annas over here. I mean, I don't want so many Annas. I mean, I'm good with one Anna if you ask me. So we definitely will need to add this extra logic to make it more strict. So once Anna is added one more time, or somebody with a new name, we're going to basically execute our exception, right? Use our exception handling to make a unique message to the client telling him, hey, if you want to be a new teacher in our school, you better have some unique name, buddy. I am going to delete this Anna's over here, but you know what? We'll do it through our code. We can do it through our workbench, but we'll do it in the next episode, adding more functionality to our controller and then more logic as well. Thank you for watching. If you like the video, go ahead and subscribe. There are more videos. There are more videos that are coming that are spring related. Have a lovely day. Cheers.